Okay. Well, let me introduce who we have joining us, because we got some really important guests with us today. So we're thrilled to be joined by our usual Christian Moore. Little background on Christian for those that may not be aware. Christian's the internationally renowned speaker, licensed clinical social worker, and advocate for youth. He's the founder of the Y Tribe program, and we've been hosting these kind of series of webinars and being joined by experts in their fields. And we're thrilled today to have one of the leading experts in the country on suicide prevention, Dr. Greg Hudnall. Dr. Hudnall is a former high school principal. He's considered one of the leading experts in community and school-based suicide prevention, intervention, and postvention. He lives by the mantra, while it takes a village to raise a child, it takes an entire community to save one. I love that. Welcome, Dr. Hudnall. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for the opportunity. Glad to be here.
And then we are also thrilled. I should introduce myself. My name is Jason Johnson. I'm a trainer with the Y Tribe organization, oversee research and development. My background is I'm a school psychologist. And then really thrilled, we've got three special guests today. We've got students who are trained in the Hope Squad and have some kind of unique experience and perspective on the topic of suicide prevention. I'm going to introduce them. We've got Kylie Tidwell. She is the president of the National Council for the Hope Squad. She's a senior and goes to, I'm not going to say the name right. Kylie, how do you say it?
It's New Ames High School. So,
New Ames High School in Layton, Utah. She's been part of the Hope Squad for 3 years. She loves the community and passion surrounding its mission. It's fun to be a part of the group, driven and kind to peers. Memphis Owen joins us from Bonneville High School. Welcome, Memphis. Memphis is a sophomore, second year on Hope Squad. She loves it because it teaches her how she can help people while also teaching skills that she'll use forever in life. And then we are joined by Claire Champagne. Welcome, Claire. Claire is a senior, is that correct? A senior at Logan High School. You're one of those unique seniors that's dealing with one of the most unusual senior years that I'm aware of. So I'm interested in that perspective as well. Claire's been on the Hope Squad for 2 years, loves the important everyday life skills that Hope Squad teaches her. So thank you everybody for joining us. We're thrilled to have you. Christian, did you have any luck with your audio, or is it still struggling? Looks like it may still be struggling. So that's all right. Let's maybe we can just jump right into the topic at hand, because we've had a tremendous amount of interest in this topic. It's a very serious and a very important topic. And I think what I'd like to do, Greg, if it's okay with you, maybe we can just jump right into it. And if you have, I know you had some ideas you wanted to get right into. What do you think? How would you say we could start this topic?
You know, one of the things, Jason, that as we work with parents and work with school districts and communities, one of the things we start out talking about is really giving the permission to talk about suicide and ask those difficult questions. Too many times we as adults are afraid that if we ask someone if they're thinking about suicide or thinking about taking their life, that it's going to give them the idea. When in reality, the research shows that in most cases, kids have already thought about it, young people and even adults have already thought about it. And one of the best things that we can do is talk about it. We started the Hope Squad program because we had an amazing young man, very popular, come to school after the Christmas holidays, take his watch off, give it to his best friend, said, "I'm not going to need this after tomorrow." He went on to tell 5 other friends that he was going to take his life, and not one of those friends told an adult. So the Hope Squad really trains, and that's what you're going to see from these 3 amazing young ladies that are with us, the ability to reach out and talk about it. And so I think that's the first thing that that's important to understand, is we're giving permission for you that if you're a teacher, if you're a parent, if you're a counselor, a principal, or whoever it is at a school, and you have a student that you're worried about, to have the courage to ask those questions. Have you thought about hurting yourself? Have you thought about suicide? Have you thought about killing yourself? So that's one of the things that is really important for people to start feeling comfortable with.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you starting with that. For a long time, there was a kind of a conventional thought that this was something we couldn't talk about, shouldn't talk about. And it's been a little bit more recent that the research has really showed that it's actually important to be able to talk about. Christian, did you get your audio fixed?
Yep. Everything's working now. I think. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you sound great.
All right. Yep. I think we got it fixed. Along the lines that you were just saying there, Greg, it's still bouncing back a little bit, but I wonder if we should go completely out and back in. We might want to just do that, but it's fine. I'll just keep going. Hopefully it'll go away. But basically, I think it's really important. What you're just talking about there, Greg, is also being able to normalize their feelings. When they feel feelings of, anger, depression, anxiety, fear, that students understand that those are feelings, that it's part of the human condition. Everybody feels those feelings. Sometimes in our society, in our world, we have a lot of kids that think those feelings, that something's majorly wrong with them, that it's not okay to have those feelings, but it's just the human condition. We all feel a wide array of emotions. What are some of your feelings on that?
It's interesting, Christian, because you're right on, especially right now with the coronavirus situation, that the social distancing is also creating the social isolation. And so kids are being pent up with their families, parents, others are struggling with these kids. It's almost that cabin fever. And one of the things I learned a long time ago, anger covers three emotions. Anger covers fear, hurt, or disappointment. And so as an adult, as a parent, I try to train leaders and teachers and others that when you see that kid who's angry, try to start peeling back the layers, but try not to dismiss the anger. Too many times we as adults say, oh, just get over it. Oh, just suck it up. Don't recognize and honor those true emotions that they're going through.
No, absolutely. And I because my sound wasn't working here really good, I did want to take a minute and introduce Greg a little bit more. Greg with Hope Squad is literally doing some, I think, some of the most innovative work in this country around suicide. I personally have seen him cope with the aftermath of a suicide and bring a community together and do some incredible stuff. So I want to just thank him for being here with us. I'm so excited that Greg's here. He also offered me my first job as a school social worker. So I appreciate what he's doing, and his insight on suicide is tremendous. Another intervention I want to point out here real quick that we find is really important is having the hope of a future promise, having something to look forward to, believing that change is possible. Because if you don't believe that things can change, it's hard to have that internal hope to just keep pushing through and deal with the intensity of those level of emotions. What are some of your feelings around that, Greg, of having a future promise?
Yeah, one of the things I always quote when I work with kids and schools is that hope is our greatest future. And kids have to know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Joyner, who's one of our pre-researchers on suicide in the world, talks about that there's three areas that when an individual gets ready to take their life, the number one reason young people and even adults take their life is they feel all alone. And they feel like there's no one there that's understanding what they're going through. And then the second part of it is that they feel like they're a burden. There is no hope. There's nothing to hold on to. So I might as well not live. And then that capability. And he said when those pieces come together, then it's that perfect storm for someone, to be at risk for suicide. But one of the things that I work with families, with kids that are struggling with anxiety, and our teachers can do the same thing. One of the things I try to train them is you need to have structure. So right now we have a lot of parents that are telling kids, oh, you can sleep in, you can do whatever you want. And sometimes that actually leads to more depression, more anxiety. And so that structure, so the kids know, that this is the bedtime, this is the time we wake up, these are the activities that we're doing, because there will be a tomorrow. There will be something to look forward to, and there will be things that will be available in our life.
Yep, yep. And I think sometimes I know when I was a therapist, I overlooked this too often, but just the most simple things, regular sleep, eating, exercise, all those things are so important, which you're just alluding to there, that just make sure we do those basic things. I know one thing it's really powerful too, is another intervention is to make sure that there's always a story, a very complex, painful story as it relates to suicide, and making sure that story is heard, it's understood, it comes out, and it comes out in a safe place where there's not any judgment, and a really good friend can just let them be heard. Sometimes giving a ton of advice isn't gonna maybe be the best thing, but to let them get the story out and then go with them to get more professional help, or to get with in a safe place to deal with the intensity that they're dealing with. But again, that's so important for them to be heard.
Yeah, I had a young lady who's just phenomenal and very popular in her high school, very beautiful. And she shared with me a story about she has struggled with severe depression her entire life. And she said, Dr. Hudnall, every day I get out of bed wondering if I'm going to live or if I'm going to die. And she said, if it hadn't been for a Hope Squad member who recognized that I was struggling, she said that I got to a point where I felt hopeless, and I felt that no one cared about me, and I just wanted to give up. But this other student who was a classmate recognized and reached out to her and just said, hey, are you doing okay? And then this young lady started to cry. And she talked about how we're so judgmental in our society, and we tend to almost compartmentalize people. So if you act this way, oh, then you're weird. If you do this or whatever. And she said, especially, it's not just young people. I see it as adults. We tend to judge people, and it can become very offensive. And she said, my dream is that as a world, we become more accepting, more kind, and less judgmental. I love that comment.
I love that. I love that. That's powerful. And another one I think is so important is I know my own life, remembering what I have overcome in my past is something that helps me a lot when I'm feeling intense depression, and it just is, even as a business owner going into COVID and dealing with all these tremendous opposition, all these difficulties right now, I have to remind myself, hey, I have overcome things in my past. I'm getting through school with learning disabilities, the challenges I have with learning disabilities in the workplace, different things, and just really saying, hey, well, this is what I did in the past. I can build on that for the future.
Every one of us have a story. Every one of us have experiences. And I honestly have caught myself a couple of weeks ago feeling so overwhelmed, working from home, not getting outside, not having the good diet, the good exercise, and sleeping well. And two of the things, my wife is a therapist and she works for the VA, specializes in PTSD. And two of the things that she really reminded me and helped me work on, number one is getting sunshine. And I would encourage those parents, others that, step outside, even if it's just on the patio, on the sidewalk, or even through the window, but get that light, that warmth, because it's amazing what those sun rays do to help us. And then the second thing is the deep breathing. When we start to become anxious and start to become depressed, you take that deep breath and then you hold it. I walked into a classroom one time as a principal, and this amazing teacher was having her 42 kids in her English class doing these deep breathing. And afterwards I said, well, what were you doing? And she said, I had two kids I could tell that were starting to stress out. And instead of picking on those individual students, I stood up in front of the class and said, class, one of the things that I struggle with is anxiety. And every once in a while it starts to hit me. And I need you to know that I'm struggling with it today. So I would like you to join with me to start doing this breathing. And it was interesting because she shared, a couple of the kids folded their arms, put their head on the table and said, this is stupid. But she was amazed at how many of the students did it. And then about a week later, she had a note on her desk from a student that she didn't realize was struggling. And she said, I want to thank you for having the courage to do that, because it really has helped me in some other classes. We need to be that role model and that example with those things that can help kids learn to we can't make those anxieties go away. There's no magical pill. There is medicine that helps and other things, but I think the more that we can be the role example and then help them get involved with it, the better we're going to help our kids and our students.
No, that's awesome. And I'm always trying to figure out, as a social worker, I'm always trying to figure out those strategies to not miss those kids that we don't know, that we don't know where they are emotionally. And one thing I do with families is I try to encourage the parents to create a safe space or a space time for the child that they can express anything. It can be something from a cue, like if the child, if they just say the word ice cream, that means they just want to go for a ride. And during that hour, and it could be just a time during the day, I had another family from 1 to 2 o'clock. Anything the teenagers told them was a safe space. They wouldn't be judged, put down, and the family would problem solve together. So sometimes kids are so afraid when they're dealing with maybe a mistake they made or something difficult. They're feeling socially isolated from other people. If they have a time, they know I can give this code word to my parent. I know between 1 and 2 o'clock, anything I tell my parents, they're going to work together with me as a team, because I'd much rather these kids be able to talk to their parents and be safe. And sometimes it just naturally happens, but in some homes, it's really important that the child knows there's a specific time that they can literally talk to their parents about anything. And there's rules that they know they're going to be safe no matter what they express. And over the years, I've seen that save a lot of kids' lives. What do you, your feelings on that, Greg?
I love that, Christian, because one of the things that we work with families is the two things that jump to my mind. The number one protective factor is having one meal a day with no electronics. So we tell families, breakfast, lunch, dinner, even a midnight snack, I don't care, but bring your family together, get rid of the electronics. And it was interesting. I had a father follow up with me, and he said, when we eat, all my kids do is argue. And they argue with me, and they argue with my wife, etc. And I said, that's probably important in your family right now. And he goes, why? I said, because your children feel safe enough that they can argue and that they can debate and have those discussions. I said, when we used to go on, and still, my kids are grown now, but when we would go on vacations, we would get in the van. We have 4 children. And the first 45 minutes, all they did was argue. They argued about space. They argued about stuff. And I can remember a couple of times I'd look at my wife and go, this is ridiculous. This is crazy. I want to go home. And she would say, no, let's just keep driving. And then about an hour later, they were laughing and joking, and we were telling stories and singing songs. And when we would come home, we would talk about, wow, that was such an amazing trip. And I forgot those first 45 minutes of the discussion and the debate. So I think you're so right. In our family, we had a code word that we trained our kids at a very young age. And I'll never forget an experience. We were somewhere at another family, and I thought everything was going so well. We were having dinner with them and activities. And my son got up, I think he was about 11, and he used the word. And all of us just stopped and looked at him. And we knew then that we needed to go. And so we left, and our son shared with us a very challenging thing that was going on, but he needed to know that he could safely share with us without us challenging him, putting him down or whatever. And you're right on. That's been such an amazing tool for us to remember.
All right, thanks. The other thing I want to emphasize that, and I was really inspired by one of our past Surgeon Generals. He traveled the United States, and he was trying to help people with heart disease and all these different issues to deal with the physical body. And after doing that for a little while, what hit him was, and just hearing from thousands of people, that one of the biggest battles people are really struggling with is loneliness. And he just said, I want to pick up the sword for loneliness. He goes, loneliness, it has such an impact too on our physical health as well. And he really inspired me. I need to apologize, I don't have the name of his book. He recently came out with a book about this after being the Surgeon General of the United States. And one of the things that we're realizing that leads to loneliness, and I've seen this in many, many communities, many, many schools across the country, it's actually just a natural human thing that happens is we as humans, we cling to people who are like us, people with the same culture, ethnic group, background. You know, in many schools we have the jock kids, the smart kids, the quote nerds, not to label anybody, but we have all these different breakdowns, and this carries on into adulthood too. Sometimes we create tremendous separation. And one of the most important things that I really believe has a huge impact that could really start to lower suicide in this country is to really focus more on being inclusive, and really fighting this concept of an in-group and an out-group mentality. I see the students nodding to that. Yeah, do you guys see in-group and out-group in your schools? And every kid across this country, I apologize to you, adults need to be braver and speak out about this. There's many reasons why we as adults don't take this on and speak out about it. And we really have got to do this. And one of the reasons, I hope the students understand, one of the reasons adults don't take this on or speak out about it sometimes is because of, we understand that it's a protective factor. To be a part of a tribe and be part of a group is a powerful, powerful, research shows us, if not the most powerful protective factor. But when I talk to kids and adults that are really struggling with suicide, the two things they always say to me, and in the last 10 years particularly, is this country's become more divided as we celebrate what's different about us, and that this group is more right than this group is more wrong, and we live in this world of trying to draw all these lines in the sand. That that what we're realizing is when we talk to these populations, they always say two things. They say, hey, I feel lonely, and just like what Greg was talking about, they feel like they're a burden, and they're a burden. They almost know not to approach the in-group. It's to approach that in-group is so dangerous, it's so scary, because they've let them, not that that's really the perspective of the in-group. The in-group might well receive them, but it's the perspective of the person who feels like giving up, shutting down, because they feel like maybe they've let that in-group down, they're not good enough to be in that in-group. And it's just an issue that I think is rarely talked about. And I think that I see it constantly in the work I'm doing around suicide. And I think we got to really, really do things to bring people, bring that closest, to bring inclusiveness. And one way in an online world that we can do that is, I want to encourage teachers, when you do group assignments, put students together that would never hang out with each other in a million years, so from different socioeconomic status, cultural backgrounds, you know, the jocks with maybe an academic kid or whatever, I don't know, just bringing kids and then have a conversation why it's important that we don't have in and out groups, that the bigger in group we have, I think it's going to do a major, major impact on lowering suicide in this country. And again, the kids talk to me about, you know, I travel almost every year to every state, and every child talks to me about this. And it's something that I think we as adults have really got to step it up and have these conversations. When I worked in the schools, I used to take all of the, and I better be back in the school soon, but when I was in the school, I don't know when I'm gonna be back, but when I was in the school, I would take all the faculty to the cafeteria, and I would sit there for 30 minutes with the faculty and help them see how this school is divided up constantly into an in-group and an out-group. And the faculty would sometimes just start sobbing. They're like, I don't know why I never even think about this. I don't know why we look like this. And you see, you know, people in the most powerful positions in this country, you know, they attack each other. They make it very clear, you're not with me, or if you're not for me, you're against me. This is constantly going on. And I think some of the most sensitive people, this hurts the most. I find out the people who care the most, the most sensitive, are the most hurt by this. And these are the kids and families I'm talking to in this country that are suicidal. And I just think that voice doesn't give out. I'm gonna be straight up. I even hesitated to share this because it's not politically correct to talk about what I'm talking about. And I've gotten pushback at every step of the way of talking about this, but it is the very common denominator. And I appreciate, I caught the students nonverbal on this, and I appreciate that. And what are your feelings? I'm sorry, it's kind of a soapbox for me.
Thank you, Christian.
But what do you feel? And I see that the people, I've seen about 30 people are screaming, I agree. And it's, let's put this topic on top of the table and change this, because we cannot have the mentality of this in and out group thinking.
Thank you, Christian. I think this is a good time to throw it to the kids, but I wanted to make sure, Dr. Hudnall, do you have anything you want to add to that before we throw it over to the kids for their thoughts?
society. About a year ago, Times Magazine on the cover said 40 million adults feel all alone and feel like they have no one to talk to. If adults are feeling this way, how can you expect their children to be any different? And so, Christian, I think your challenge is great, but I think it has to be a little bit stronger. I think it has to begin with the community, and it has to begin with the families, and it has to bring everybody together that way. As a church leader, I brought my congregation together, and I asked every adult that had a child from middle school to high school to give us just a little paragraph about them. And then I brought all of the adults together, and we passed out these booklets of all of these kids in our congregation, and it had information about them. And then I asked all the adults to, when you see these kids, I want you to reach out and say hi. I want you to remind them that you know them. And the first week I got a call from a parent of my congregation, and she said, my daughter came home freaked out because this 80-year-old was in the neighborhood, and he said, oh, Lisa, how are you? I understand you're on the soccer team at Provo High or whatever. But it was amazing how it changed the connection, and that I belong to something. I'm part of something. And 3 months later, we brought all the adults together and asked them about this experience. They talked about it. I mean, it was amazing what the kids were feeling like now they were included with the in-group. And when we started to finish, I had 4 or 5 adults say, hey, can we do this with adults in our congregation so the kids know who we are and we can feel connected? Because what happens is when you start to feel connected, those walls come down, because then all of a sudden you are part of that in-group and the individuals who feel like they're respected and appreciated. Yeah, I agree, Jason. I'd love to hear from Kylie, Memphis, and Claire. And I would just like to make a comment to introduce them. These young ladies are members of Hope Squads. The Hope Squad students are nominated by their peers. So we go into a high school, we go through every class, English class, and we ask the students, if you were struggling emotionally and needed to talk to someone, list the names of 3 of your peers that you would feel comfortable talking to. And the most amazing thing is when we started with our first school, 2,100 kids nominated 40 students. The same 40 names rose to the top. Now, these 3 young ladies that you're going to hear from now are our national officers. They're highly respected by the Hope Squad members that are trained to recognize kids that are struggling, and then they reach out to them.
Thank you. Thanks for that introduction of them. So Claire, Kylie, Memphis, we're going to throw it over to you. If you would like to share some thoughts, we have a lot of educators and counselors that are very interested in this topic, and they're very interested in hearing your perspective on it. So I'm going to turn it over to you, and please share some of your ideas with us.
I really like what Christian said about the in-group and the out-groups. There was a time I was in a musical class, and that's so out of my comfort zone, and I was talking to some friends, and they're like, yeah, your friend group seems really cool, but they're so intimidating. My group of friends, we've been friends since elementary school, and I hadn't realized how intimidating that would come across as, and we're just so close-knit. And for me, as an Hope Squad, I'm always trying to look for people to reach out and look for those people who need a friend. But I hadn't realized that it hadn't been brought to my attention that what I was doing, just being in my friend group, could come off as intimidating, you know? And I think once someone said that, like, oh, that's kind of intimidating, and you guys seem like standoffish from getting to know other people, that's when that was really a game changer for me. And me and my friends started sitting with new people at lunch, and like you said in class, when they're like, pair up with a partner, boom, you go to your friend, you know? But we started going out with different people, and that changed everything. And I feel like that really helped me grow as a person, just trying to look out above my friend group.
Awesome. Thank you.
I agree.
Yeah, and I feel like I have definitely seen in and out group. I think that it's really normal to be drawn to people who are similar to you because that's what's comfortable. And even within my own Hope Squad, I'm the president of my school's Hope Squad, and it was brought to our attention that there was even some clickiness and division within the Hope Squad, because with Hope Squad, people nominate people they look up to, and so that brings a bunch of people from different groups to one group, and it changes the dynamic of the school a lot. And so, I think what really helps with changing the in and out is just to be like intentional, as an individual, and then also as like a leader. As the president, I had to be intentional on like, how am I going to get these kids to connect, because they have similarities that just aren't as visible as the immediate draws make you into a group. And just to be willing to get out of your comfort zone. So we started kind of playing games, and like what Christian was kind of saying, and Claire is like dividing with like teachers, or like with my advisor, we'd put groups together that wouldn't normally be drawn together, and would have them be in charge of planning an event, of planning a day for our Hope Week, which is like our week to like kind of bring awareness for suicide prevention. And that really helped kind of break down some of those walls and that clickiness, because it made kids realize, what, we have something that's drawing us together and that is holding us together. And just because it's not visible in the moment doesn't mean it's not important. So.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Memphis?
just to go along with what Claire and Kylie have said, I know that at our school, we also definitely have those groups. It's just really a prevalent thing. But one of the things that I really liked that my advisor had us do is at the beginning of every trimester, she gives us the challenge, and we have 2 weeks to know the names of every person in every single one of our classes. And then we're challenged to go and talk to them and use their names when we see them in the halls, not just be like, oh, hey, but to be like, hi, Kylie, hi, Claire. That way that they know that you're actually talking to them and you know who they are. And also to try to eliminate those kind of the cliques and the groups in our Hope Squad. This past week, my advisor, where we're all online, she decided that she was going to have us give some presentations. And instead of being like, okay, just pick your partner and then give your presentation, she was like, no, I'm going to pair you guys up. So she paired me with one of the seniors, which like I knew her name and I talked to her before, but I didn't know her super well. And so we got to present together, and it was really fun just to get to know her. And I thought it was an excellent idea because it helped break up some of those groups, because we had to get a little bit more close so that we could work together. So
Awesome.
Love it. Thank you. Thank you. So a couple of things that are coming up right now. So right now we're in an interesting situation where connection is a little bit difficult. And then there's still, I think, is a general nervousness by people, by adults, on how to approach this topic and this conversation. I want to throw it to the whole panel, but I'd love to hear from the students first, your perspective. What are your ideas right now on connection? What's working for you? What are you seeing your teachers do? What message would you share to the educators that are out there as far as connection right now during this pandemic situation goes? And then also, it's kind of a two-part question, I guess. What advice would you give to grown-ups that don't know how to approach or start this conversation, because it can be awkward sometimes?
So to answer the first question about educators, first of all, just thank you guys for everything that you do. We as students really do appreciate everything, because it's really just crazy, everything that's going on. But really what I would say to that is just really be looking out for them and be checking up on your students. I know at least what my teachers are, we're doing Google Meets right now. And so there's a lot of us that they're encouraging us all to participate so that we still get to do that interaction, and just letting them know that they still care about us and they're there to help us out. And
Thank you. Looks like you just got muted for a minute, Memphis. Did you get a chance to finish your thought, that last thought?
no, can you repeat what the second question was?
Yeah, what advice do you have for grown-ups that may be nervous about or not know how to approach this subject or have a conversation about it with kids, the subject of suicide and suicide prevention in general?
Yeah, so the advice that I would give is just to be genuine and not to be afraid to talk about it, because it does seem really scary at first, but really, if you will bring that up and ask them, hey, I noticed that you're struggling. Are you thinking about killing yourself or anything like that? It really does open the communication. So even though it does seem pretty scary, it actually opens up that communication to whoever you're, so that they know I can talk about this because they brought it up, and so I don't have to feel like I'm going to be shunned or I'm going to be judged if I bring it up because they brought it up for me. So it really opens that communication. So I would say just be genuine and be yourself, and don't be afraid to talk about it.
Thank you, thank you. Kylie, it looks like you had some ideas.
Yeah, so first of all, with the trying to stay connected as like an educator, what I have really seen work with my classes, because all my classes are online. We've had live Zoom calls, and I realized that not every school quite has the resources to support that. But I've seen that the live calls where we're able to see our teacher face to face and connect with them, even if it's not necessarily focused on our new material, but also like my statistics teacher, he just opens every call and he just kind of asks us how we're doing, and we just kind of have a discussion about how are we feeling, and it doesn't even, and people will tell him about their day. And I just feel like staying connected. Right now society is like in such an interesting place because everyone is experiencing the same things. My teachers are going through similar situations that I am, and so having that moment to connect with them in a way that's like not pressured, but like he's frustrated as well, my teacher's frustrated as well, and he's expressing that to us, and we're able to connect with him on that. And just to have that authenticity, like what Memphis was saying, I think just being genuine about that. This isn't an easy situation, but we're all in it together, has really helped people stay grounded during this time. And, with the whole discussion and trying to talk about suicide and if they're considering suicide, it's always an awkward conversation. I've been on Hope Squad for 3 years, and I still feel uncomfortable when I'm talking to someone about their situation, just because it's never easy. It's really vulnerable, and it's a really intense question, and it's okay to have it be like that. Again, like authenticity is just what's important. A lot of times I've seen that, at least the teenagers that I've been talking to, they can see when their adults or when their parents or their guardians are not being genuine with them, and they can tell when it is something that they're just trying to get through rather than to open up that conversation and have it be real. So I think what's really important is to open the conversation with and say, like, you know what, this is uncomfortable for me as well, and I just really want to check up on you because I care about you and you're important to me, so I'm willing to have this conversation with you. So it's okay for it to be uncomfortable, but that's kind of the powerful part, because once you kind of have that conversation, once you get everything on the table, there's a deeper connection, and there's room for more conversations to continue after the initial hard, difficult question. So
Thank you so much, Kylie. I love that. Clary, anything you want to add?
I think both of those girls said amazing things. I think one thing I've seen my teachers do is just when I'm submitting assignments in the email, they'll say, hope you're doing good. And for some reason, that just means a lot, knowing that they're caring about me as a person and that they're just checking in, and just normalizing saying, how are you? And trying to make time to, instead of just being like, good, how are you? Taking time, and so they can see that you're genuine. But yeah, I think what the girls have said is really good.
Awesome. Thank you. Greg, Christian, throw it over to you now. What are your thoughts along those same lines?
One thing I really loved, Kaylee was saying that hit me really hard is, and I'm seeing this as I talk to lots of teachers, is they're hurting too. They're hurting tremendously. These teachers are in a lot of pain. And a lot of the teachers have said to me, when they can interact with students, when they hear how you guys are doing and that connection, it's meant a lot to those teachers too. I mean, so I want the students to know you're helping those teachers heal when you're really authentic and you tell them how you're really doing. that means so much to those teachers, and it kind of gives them strength to keep doing a very difficult job. So I want students to understand you make a huge difference for those teachers as well. And just looking for ways to keep the lines of communication open between the teachers and the students. So we're going to have another webinar here in the next few little while, just focusing just on strategies to do that. And we've talked about that in past webinars as well. But that's a huge need, and why try? We're going to continue to provide a lot of those resources, and then keeping that open with the parents. I know Greg is really passionate about having families have the tools to deal with these issues as well. And maybe Greg, you can talk a little bit about that as well. I know that's something you're very passionate about.
Yeah, one of the things that we learned early on is that it's important for the family to feel connected. You know, when you start to hit middle school, it's more important for kids to belong to a friendship than it is to belong to the family. You think about Maslow. Maslow says families provide food, clothing, shelter, and safety, and then society provides everything else. But what we're finding is more and more families want that skill set. They want to know how to talk about it and how to provide that support. So we created 14 family lessons on mental health, anywhere from training parents on how to teach and train coping and problem solving skills, how to talk about suicide prevention, how to talk about ways to support, especially if you have a family member or a friend who's struggling with mental health issues. And those are on our website. Those are free. I know Jason's going to put those up at the end of where you can download. The other thing that I would go back, and I want to compliment my kids, my students, the Hope Squad members. They're just phenomenal. And everywhere we go, we find these kids that are just wanting to make a difference with their life. I was in Idaho at a conference speaking, and when they opened it up for questions, one of the individuals from the audience said, "You mean you're training kids to talk other kids off the ledge?" And at first I went, no, yeah, we do that. Because I would challenge anyone to walk through the halls of a school and you hear these conversations. These kids, what we're doing is empowering them on how to recognize the signs and reach out and help. And then the last part is for teachers and the adults in the school. I think the students really talked about it. Kids don't want to be projects. And it's important for us to be sincere. And one of the other things that I have found to be very helpful is always call your students by their first name. You know, hey, Kylie, how are you doing? Hey, Memphis. Hey, Claire, nice to have you in class today. It's amazing when someone knows you and calls your name, what that does to you for your self-esteem and for that ability to feel that you do belong to someone or belong to something. So I would really encourage, especially online, you know, teachers, when you pull those kids together, find time during that 30-minute, that 50-minute discussion to call on every single one. Hey, Kylie, I want to thank you for that comment. Hey, Claire, thanks for the thing that you shared. Memphis, I never thought of that. And then I think what Kylie said is really important is that it's okay to share your struggles. It's okay that, you know what, it is a tough situation. And here I am in my closet trying to teach you today, and it's tough being in the home. And I want you to know I'm struggling with cabin fever. So thank you for allowing me to spend some time with you today. Those things are genuine, they're honest. And then the last part that I would throw out there is always using the I message. I love when the students talked about talking with a friend. I noticed in class, hey, I heard this about you and I'm wondering if you're okay, because then it's not attacking. It's a very safe way to approach. Hey, tonight at dinner, I noticed that you got really upset with your sister. That's usually not like you. I'm wondering if you're okay.
Great insights. I love it. Really appreciate that. And I think a lot of educators right now are really feeling validated in their feelings. I hope one of the things that our educators and counselors that are listening right now are taking away from this is hopefully a rejuvenation to make it across the finish line and really continue to reach out and connect with their students, because the last couple weeks as we've talked with students on these, it's been really evident to me how much the students really do appreciate the effort that their educators and counselors are making to to connect with them. And so I hope you all are feeling that. There's one other thing I wanted to bring up, and it's a big question and it's a heavy question, but it's come up a couple times in the comments, and I think it's important. What advice or strategies do you all have for communities that have experienced a recent death to student or community member to suicide? What strategies do you have for people in the aftermath of that, as far as how to approach the subject, how to talk about it, and how to support one another through that? Because we've got some people on right now that have unfortunately experienced that in their community as well.
You know, we're working with a community right now, Spanish Fork. I oversee a crisis team. We have about 40 members, and unfortunately, I've been involved now with about 50 youth suicides. The youngest, a fourth grader, that took his life on campus. And one of the things that we start out with is when we actually go in and meet with the mayor, the city council, mental health, we bring all of those folks together to start having the discussion, to start talking about it. The other thing that happens, unfortunately, is the family that loses the child, everyone's afraid to talk to them. And it really does affect that family. So we encourage families to immediately, if you're friends with so-and-so, please go over, because they're hurting and they need someone to talk to. And so you could take over a meal, you could go over and mow their yard. There's many things that you can do that just shows, hey, I'm worried about you, I care about you, and is there anything that I can do to help? And then we start training the community. Over the next 6 months, we'll probably do 50 presentations, faith-based groups, businesses, mental health agencies. We do QPR, we do Suicide 101. We also go into the schools and we start training the schools and giving them the help and support. Because too many times when there's a suicide in a school, we just want it to go away. We don't want to talk about it. And that's one of the worst things that we can do, because we want to do everything that we can to prevent the copycat and prevent the contagion. So we start working with the school. We have the crisis team on board. We start allowing the students to talk about it. That morning of the day of the suicide, we actually meet with all the teachers and we give them a note that they're going to read second period to every class. But we also give the teachers the ability to start talking about the suicide in the class. I know you're hurting. Help me understand how you're feeling. So that we want to make sure that we don't cause more confusions, more problems. We want to address it head on and provide that support.
Thank you. Christians and the students, what ideas do you have in regards to the same question? Kind of support and strategies for communities that have experienced that.
Yeah, and I just want to say I've seen firsthand Greg go in and do this in many communities. The Hope Squad do this, and it's been a great inspiration to me. It's just been unbelievable. And Greg's not going to tell you this, but I've personally seen Greg make personal sacrifice economically. But this time, he never stops thinking about this. He does this 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and that's why Hope Squad and what Greg Hudnall does. He's literally one of my heroes on this planet. He does incredible stuff bringing the community together. One thing that I do a lot when I go into communities after these situations is I emphasize to the community that that resilience is within all of us. That what leads to a suicide sometimes is something, after suicide happens, we'll beat ourselves up. We might be angry at the person that committed suicide and stuff. But what I've learned is it's so important that we give that person grace. I try to encourage the community that a lot of times there's mental health issues and different things around suicide, and that we have to be able to give that person grace and then give ourselves grace when that happens as well. That forgiveness, one of the things that kills resilience, you can't bounce back, you can't be resilient if you emotionally beat yourself up and you attack another human being. It's really hard to heal. And I think that's so important. And then, we teach something with our resilience work on something called flipping the switch, that when a crisis or pain, you see millions of people are doing this right now with COVID. There's a tremendous pain, there's the loneliness, the suffering. And And the people who are saying to themselves, okay, I'm going to use this suffering, I'm going to use this pain as a reason to reach out to another human being, to connect with another human being, creates that resilience. And so it's so important that we realize we even have this switch within us that we can flip in a crisis. And again, the gateway to flipping that switch is to say to yourself, how do I use this suffering? How do I use this lowest moment of my life to try to work harder, to put things in action? And the healing often happens in a community. And this is what's so effective about what Hope Squad does, is it doesn't just passively sit by. Hope Squad puts action into the community, and then that action is what creates the motivation. So motivation and the desire to be resilient, to push through, doesn't start until the action happens. And that's what I'm so proud about what Hope Squad and Greg's work is. It really puts the action in place for the healing to start. And I just want everybody to know out there that everybody has that switch, resilience. And people always ask me, do you have to learn resilience? Are you born with it? And I really believe you can learn skills of resilience, but if you're a human being on planet Earth, you're highly resilient. You have it within you. And I think that resilience kind of really brings that community together when they understand that to be able to have that grace for each other, because there's a lot of emotions. I mean, I had one of my closest friends, even the past week, he took his life, and death by suicide, and it's very painful, and that forgiveness is so important. It's so needed, and I just want to plant that seed in the community, and all those things, to put it out on the table and to be able to really talk about it, and to talk about what in this community, sometimes at a community level, what are we doing to create in-group and out-groups at a community level? That's some of the stuff I'm working on, is to talk about, are there things the community can do to create a larger in-group? Because if we know the biggest protective factor, of course, is that in-group, how do we expand that in-group into the community when this loss has happened? Because again, when I talk to many of the people who take right before they take their lives, man, they're not feeling attached to too many things in the community in general. I mean, I'm speaking general. And so I think that's so important. I think what Hope Squad does, I mean, the reason I'm on this with Greg, I mean, Greg is literally my hero. This is a guy who does nothing but this work. And so a hero is not a light word. I know I hope I don't embarrass Greg here, but he's the best in the business. He really is when it comes to this.
I know we're running out of time, Jason. But one of the things that I see a bunch of questions about cutting and other things that way. And I would just like to end with a couple of comments on that. The CDC, Center for Disease Control, has come out and said that there is now a direct correlation from cutting to suicide. For many years, we just used it as teenage problems, kids struggling or whatever. The two places that kids are cutting themselves now, between the toes and under the armpits, so that families don't, because we've trained for 10 years families how to check their children or whatever. But my point is, if you have a child or a student or someone that's cutting, please get them help immediately. Have them talk to the professionals, because that now is a direct link to suicide. And we want to do everything that we can to early intervene, to provide support and help for them.
Thank you. I appreciate that reminder. It's a really, really important topic. I wanted to give our student guests, Kristen, do you have one more thing?
Yeah, I just want to add the importance of physical touch. So many kids are complaining to me, man, I feel that loneliness is tied to, I don't feel a lot of physical touch sometimes. And if I tell parents, man, especially if teenagers, man, hug them 3-4 times a day. My goal is, by the end of the day, my kids are like, stop touching me. That is my goal. They're like, Dad, leave me alone. Don't touch me. And that's literally my goal by the end of the day, to be that annoying, goofy parent. And when you do hug them, I mean, Hans, who created Y-Try with me, I mean, he's awesome with it. He's always screaming, man, hug your kids for at least 20-second hugs, 30-second hugs, minute hug. And he's something, he really advocates that. And I have found, especially with work I've done with kids that are cutting, to when we can get the parents to do it. I'm not saying that solves it, that's not what causes it. It's more complex than that. But we've seen that hunger from so many children. And so I just want to plant that seed.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, our student friends, parting thoughts on what we've been discussing. One other thing that's come up, and maybe you could give some brief insight into this. There's been a ton of good information. What are you doing right now, students? What does your outreach look like right now under social distancing conditions? How are you doing that? That question's come up a few times, and that's probably the last one we'll get to before we wrap up.
Yeah. So, and I also just want to speak really quickly also to what we were kind of talking about before, which is, kind of trying to recover. And a thought that I had is just that, having grace with yourself, it can be really difficult and it can be really hard. I've seen that because especially as a Hope Squad member, if there's a community that have Hope Squad kids and then there's a suicide, it can be really painful because they take on a responsibility. And just what I tell my kids is that, you this is not information you're born with. This is something you learn, and there's always more room to learn. And that these experiences are painful, but just to remember that suicide in many cases is a choice and it's a decision, and we're here to help, but that you just need to have grace for yourself in the process because it's not an easy situation to be in at all. So yeah, so that was my thought. And then also just something that the National Council has really been trying to do, which is the National Council for Hope Squad, we're on that. These are my girls, the council members. We have been really focusing on social media reach out because right now, it's all virtual and a lot of kids are spending a lot of time on social media. And it can be very negative because people are expressing their feelings during this time, and that negativity is just another place for kids to be brought down in. And so as a national council, we've been really focusing on having positive messages sent out every single day, reminders, and then every Monday, we just have a time where people can share what has brought them hope throughout the week. And what I've seen is that it really helps encourage people to not only take a time to remember that not everything is terrible right now, that there's always something to be hopeful about and to be thankful for, but also just a place for kids to get involved. Right now I feel like a lot of people around me, they don't really have anything to do and they feel really disconnected. And if they're able to contribute to something, even virtually online, shared, that is something that's really encouraging to them because they're able to see that I shared onto our whole Instagram what has brought them hope and that they contributed to that and to that post. So that's what my goal has really been, is to stay that positive light on social media when a lot of other places tend to be more on the negative side. So
Thank you so much, Kylie. Great insight. Claire, Memphis, anything you want to add?
I was just gonna say, I really think that what Kylie said is just amazing. And the National Hope Squad Instagram, I actually personally don't have any social media, so I've had to find other ways to reach out and connect with people. But one of the things that I've found that is really effective is the people that live around me. I've just been leaving things like on their doorsteps, and I've had people leave stuff just on our doorsteps, just being like, hey, I'm thinking about you today, or I hope you have a great day. That way they know that even though we can be face to face, there's those little things that it's like, I'm still there for you, and just making sure to keep it.
Awesome. Thank you.
I really agree with what the other two girls said. That is really good. I also wanted to touch on something that Kylie said, is that a lot of times in schools, friends of kids who have committed suicide, or just students in general, I think that situation, they're looking for something to blame or someone to blame. And I think a lot of the time that blame goes to Hope Squad kids, like, this is your responsibility, why don't you stop this? And I think what Kylie said is really good. And just keeping your Hope Squad kids in mind that I know a lot of times I take responsibility when I shouldn't, and it was just to remember that everyone has their own choices and their ability to choose. Anywho, but ways that I've been helping other kids is just, I think, seeing that negativity on Instagram or whatever social media, and immediately texting that person that says negativity. I think through nowadays, a lot of kids, social media is their outlet, and they'll just go on a huge rant or just express how. I have a friend who often expresses how alone she feels on Instagram. And as soon as I see that, I send her a text, just, hey, how are you doing? Because it's obviously a big cry for help. And I think too, spending a lot of time on social media hasn't been super great for me throughout this quarantine, but I really like what Memphis did. And I've kind of done something similar, is getting outside of myself, and I'll take chalk and go to my friends' houses and write them notes on their driveway, or just neighbors like that. And I really liked what Kylie said too, just trying to involve people as much as possible. And I think that's what has been hardest for me throughout this quarantine, is just being isolated and having not being able to occupy my brain with doing other things and helping other people. So I think however you can involve your kids is awesome.
Thank you so much. I'm going to throw it over to Greg and Christian for parting words. Before we do, a lot of people have asked a couple answers to your questions. One, we are recording this, and the video will be available probably within the next couple of days. And then two, I'm going to put up a slide here when Christian and Greg are done with their remarks, that'll have some links to resources and email addresses that you can reach out to us with questions, or to take a look at some of the resources that we've referenced. But before we go to that, Christian, Greg, parting thoughts. This has been wonderful.
I want to give Greg the last word, because this is definitely his area of expertise. But I just want to say, I want to thank the students. Man, having you guys on with me was amazing. With me and Greg, it's been awesome to have you guys, your insights. I've learned a lot from you guys, and man, I'm so glad that you guys are doing the work you're doing. You're helping so many students. So you guys are my heroes as well. Thank you. Thank you. Wow, my heart is full. This has been a good one. It's been a good meeting, and I know there's so many people out there right now. They're feeling lonely, and all those things we talked about with connectedness is so important. I love the idea of you go draw for your friends, taking chalk and drawing pictures and stuff, and all those things are so important. The little things are big things right now. I want to emphasize. I've been working on a podcast. I just got a lot of feedback from some people today who were feeling pretty hopeless, pretty depressed, pretty down, who reached out to me and said, we have a podcast called the Resilience Breakthrough Podcast, where we're talking about these issues all the time and trying to give people hope and know where that resilience comes from. So please check out the Resilience Breakthrough Podcast. The easiest way to access it is on our website, whytry.org. And we also have a parenting guide that over 15,000 people across the country have downloaded and used, where we have literally hundreds of resilient skills that parents can do with their kids. They're just on our website. So those are two free resources that I really want to encourage everybody to access. And again, I want to thank my hero, the first person who gave me my introduction to social work. Greg had about 10 people he could hire, and he finally said to me, if he doesn't remember, he's like, Christian, I'm going with you. You seem to have some heart. And hired me because of my heart. I remember him telling me that, man, I had a lot of heart, and I've tried to keep that heart going. But he's been a great example to me of someone who's given everything to the cause. I mean, he'd probably be mad if I told you all this, but this man has mortgaged his house to do this. He's given everything, from his resources, his time, his heart, his passion. And he'd probably be mad at me. I told you all that, but this guy is the real deal. And what Hope Squad is doing is changing this world. And it has been beyond an honor to be with you, Greg, and with everybody. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thanks, Christian and Jason. And I want to thank Why Try for sponsoring this. This is an amazing opportunity to discuss a difficult topic. I want to compliment our students. They're amazing Hope Squad members. And the amazing thing is we have 20,000 Hope Squad members like them across the country who every single day get out of bed thinking, how am I going to help someone? I'm going to end with a comment that Jason is going to show you later, some slides, as the National Lifeline crisis line. And then there's also a crisis text line. There are many young people who are not willing to talk to someone, but they're willing to text. And I use this all the time. And it's 741-741. You're going to see this in just a minute. But it is so important to have those options for young people so that they can, when they're struggling, you go online, 741-741, and then you type in next or something, or start, START. And within minutes, you'll get a response from someone. Type in, what is it? Sorry, they changed it. Type in hello in the text message, HELLO. And then someone will respond. And it's amazing what this does for young people who feel that they can't talk to someone, but someone who can understand what they're going through and text that back to them. And once again, Jason will show you our website, hopesquad.com. We have a site for teachers, students, and parents that you can go on and pick up extra stuff that's free. So bless you for what you're doing, my fellow educators, and let's continue to support each other and help kids. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I've got the text sign up right now, and then I'm going to put some of the resources up in a minute. But please, let's give a big, huge virtual round of applause to our panelists, especially our student panelists. Your voice is so important. Christian used the word, my heart is full. I feel the same way. I had goosebumps at a couple times during this discussion when I heard about the incredible things that you're doing. And big thank you to all our educators and counselors that have logged in and are trying to take this information so that they can continue to make a difference. And then lastly, huge thank you to Greg and to Christian and for the work that you're doing. Thank you all so much. I'm going to put up those resources now. And please reach out to us if there's anything we can do to help you out. This is a really, really important topic, and thank you all for making the difference that you're making. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you so much.